Episode 20 of the BTB Project. In today's BTB Short, we are going to be discussing untold stories. I've come across several of them in my life, and the BTB Project has been built on uncovering those stories and speaking them. Stories is what connects us each and every day. And in today's episode, it will be an interactive opportunity for you, the listener, to start sharing your story. Upon listening to this episode, I want you to leave a few sentences in the comment box of what an untold story is that you have that will inspire others. Impossible's nothing, and let's get into this.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby.
Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Coleman Gerhardt. A former athlete and motivational coach, I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living all my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a foreign land.
I'm always fascinated by opportunities to learn about something or someone based off of an untold story. I mean, we can turn on Netflix or ESPN and pretty easily find something that is based off of something that was just an unbelievable or miraculous story that was untold for a period of time for some unknown reason. And it got me thinking about our lives and you as the listeners, the stories that we have and have experienced that need to be communicated, need to be recognized, and as a connecting point to relate to one another. And it really is interesting and sometimes fascinating why we decide within ourselves that our story isn't important, or our story isn't something that's going to mean anything to somebody else, or our story is embarrassing or a failure or a disappointment. But the truth is when you tell a story, you spark a connection. And that's how humans have communicated since the beginning of time. We are storytellers. And stories have been told even before humans learned to read or write. Everyday events become stories. To tell children, scribes and priests tell stories of religious affairs, and leaders tell stories about heroic tales of their adventures. So these types of stories have passed through generations. Some of them fill up history books, some are integral to culture, and some are embedded in family values. And it got me thinking more because even starting this podcast, right, I had a lot of hesitations over a 13-year period being like, why would anybody want to listen to what I have to say? And what's happened is as I learned why my stories matter, it kind of reached this new level of vulnerability for me where a lot of these, difficult circumstances or triumphs or, times of which I wasn't sure I was going to make it, or times of which I wasn't sure that I was going to be okay. That as I started telling those stories, it provided a vulnerability platform for me to do even greater things in my life. And more importantly, hear how those untold stories have become motivators or impacts in other people's lives. A lot of the stories that we have are universal. The things that I felt like wasn't worth sharing ends up being something that is actually related to or more common than I thought. And where it becomes powerful is being able to share a story, have somebody be impacted by it, and then share their story and create a community of stories based off of whatever topic or conversation that is. And now you have a cohesive group together to do life with that you can relate to. Another reason why untold stories are so important to share is stories help us understand our place in the world. It is a very unique time. And I see social media, I see all of these different forms of communication. And really what it comes down to, whether it's a book or a movie or a TV show or a podcast, whatever it may be, it is a way to understand your why and your place in the world and how to be an impact. I remember one time I had a client that was a very, very, very good tennis player. And I just remember starting to tap into some of those vulnerable, untold stories in my life. And I shared the story of my weight loss journey, losing 100 pounds in 13 months and the struggles and the trials and the tribulations and the setbacks and the success, everything. And I shared it not to glorify what I had done, but I shared it as a point, tell this particular individual that, impossible is nothing, that if I can do something like this, you can do something extraordinary. And I'll never forget, because at this point, the player that I was helping just had a lot of kind of random low energy moments. And, she was an athlete, she was a tennis player. And I just remember doing some of these lessons or watching her play matches, and she'd have, this like kind of 10, 15 minute burst of energy. And then all of a sudden she would just tank and become low energy, discoloration in her face, not really able to push themselves. And I never understood why, because I didn't know what was really going on. You can assume a lot of things as a coach or a mentor that, maybe this person isn't working very hard, or maybe this person isn't motivated, and you just don't know. And I just remember sharing my weight loss journey, and a couple months later, I heard the untold story about an eating disorder and how she had been fighting an eating disorder for years and was never really comfortable with food. And it led to her admitting herself into a rehabilitation center to try to get to the bottom of what was going on. And it broke my heart to hear that she was struggling in that regard. But she told me that my untold story of my weight loss journey inspired her to tell her untold story of an eating disorder. And that's just crazy to me to think that all of these different stories that we have, how quickly it can impact people in our lives. I got another great example. I was coaching a high school team, and we were in the tryout process. And I had a young man that had some, really good ground strokes and seemed to be playing, pretty good in the tryout process. But he'd have these days where when he was playing on a particular side of the court in doubles, he just kept losing these points randomly, and balls would go by him and he would miss hit. And I had several conversations with him, and he just said, it's just not my day, or, I came up short, or I wasn't able to execute when I was supposed to execute. And I ended up, basically getting into a situation where he didn't make the team. And I remember a couple days later, I get a phone call from his parents asking to meet with me in person. And the parents absolutely laid into me about why their kid, should have had an opportunity to make the team, and everything they were saying was absolutely correct. They had a very talented son, and he had a great tennis game, but for some reason he wasn't able to perform under pressure on a particular side of the tennis court in doubles. And as I explained it to him, they said, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, he's been through so much in his life. He was born with only vision in one eye. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second here. And I put two and two together. And what I realized is this young man was blind in his right eye. So every time he played on one side of the court where he didn't have that vision of his sight in his right eye, he wasn't able to perform because he couldn't see the ball. I had no idea he had no vision in his right eye. I had no idea that he had a glass eye. And this was a story that was untold because the parents didn't want to say that he had a disability. The parents didn't want to maximize what he can do. And with that information, with that story, it allowed me to understand, well, if he plays on the side of the court that favors the vision in his left eye, he can succeed. And he ended up having a pretty good high school tennis career because the untold story was told. So what is the point of all of this? Stories help us learn how to act wisely. Assuming is very dangerous in today's day and age. And being able to have an understanding of somebody or something or a group of individuals, whatever it may be, it's that untold story that becomes told that gives you insight into life in more ways that you could ever imagine. And that leads to, really, what is your untold story? Stories help shape our perspective of the world. As you share the things that you think no one is going to care about, or that you're ashamed of, or that you're in fear of telling, those are the stories that in that moment is a catapult to areas in your life, opportunity, success. It allows a platform of vulnerability and curiosity that can change the world. And that's really what it comes down to, is those stories help us understand other people and their perspectives. I don't want to be a know-it-all. And I know you as the listeners don't want to be a know-it-all either. And being able to diversify yourself in storytelling and listening to stories allows you to have a perspective that can impact several different individuals in several different aspects of their life in several different times of their life, all because of having perspective. And stories pass down knowledge and morals. It's a big reason why I wanted to start this podcast, was all of these untold stories over my coaching journey have created this ripple effect of community and relationship, and people reaching out to me saying that that story impacted them and I want to share mine. That's the cool part about this, is you as the listener have an opportunity today to ask yourself, what story am I going to share to impact someone's life? It is storytelling. It is getting it out there. It is making that experience accessible that truly changes the world. So think about that. What is your untold story? I love the feedback and the generous comments that I've received on the podcast, and I want to make it more interactive. So after you listen to today's episode, I'm going to have a comment section tied to the podcast. And I'd love just a sentence or two on an untold story you'd like to share. Anybody and everybody who would like to have an opportunity to talk about their story, how it can impact people's lives, how it can help others, how it can help take a burden off your shoulders, whatever it may be. I want the BTB project to be the platform for that untold story. It's those stories that change lives. It's those stories that make things incredible. It's that story that truly becomes the catalyst of impossible is nothing. I'm proud of each and every one of you. I cannot wait to hear your stories in the comments. And I appreciate you checking out today's episode. We're just looking to get 1% better each and every day. And take care.